What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy, Dead on Dave, and I am having severe computer problems today. If you watched yesterday's episode, you know that during the episode, my wife accidentally ripped off the face of my computer, and it's causing all kinds of havoc. To be honest, the computer has been going on the decline for a while, and I just haven't replaced it because I'm a creature of habit, and I like things staying easy. But the reality is it's time for a new system, and I need to upgrade. So I'm going to go computer shopping directly after this episode is up. But I'm not sure if it's going to take me, if I'm going to have any downtime, maybe not having an episode up the next day. I'm not sure. It just depends how long I can transfer everything over. And I'm fairly retarded, so you have to keep that in mind. Even though I worked in the technical field for over 10 years in the military, I'm still fairly retarded. That's what happens when you don't do anything technically related for 5 years. With all that being said, welcome to the program. It is Wednesday, so it is Random Rant Wednesday, and we got a lot to talk about. So let's get right to it. We got NFL news up the wazoo. But first, let's start with this. Those of you who are interested in playing fantasy baseball on Yahoo for the Dead on Dave Productions League, we got about 5 slots left, maybe 4. So if you want to get in, now's the time. Either tweet me or email me at deadondaveproductions@yahoo.com. All right? deadondaveproductions@yahoo.com. Just created it. So email me there if you want to be a part of it, of the Fantasy Baseball League, or just tweet me and I'll send you an invite, and boom, bickety bam, the motherfucker's rubble. It's too easy. And you can get in on the best, craziest action for fantasy baseball. We are having a live draft on Saturday. It will be hosted by the great Joe Cronin, and we're going to have a lot of fun. 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, live draft. It's going to be a blast. We're going to talk shit. We're going to pick some teams. It's going to be fun. I'm probably going to drink late at night for me. I'm probably going to get drunk as hell. It's going to be crazy. What? Why are you shaking your head?
You don't get drunk.
Why can't I get drunk?
Because you always go nuts.
I don't always go nuts. I'm not nuts. I think nuts is a little strong of a word. I don't drink very often.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare. Don't you have a computer to break?
Yeah, I'm waiting until you're in the middle of the show and then I rip the cables out of you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, at least, that's good. Wait to the middle of the show. That's nice of her. Isn't she so nice? I think so, too. If you want your Dead on Dave merchandise to help me pay for a new computer, go to Spreadshirt.com, deadondave.spreadshirt.com. All of the designs made by the great Isaac Rojas. And he'll do stuff for you, too, because he's a really cool guy. So if there's anything you need, he might charge you. He should charge you. He should be a smart, industrious young man. Don't start charging me, of course, but charge them. And maybe even give me a kickback since I'm advertising your amazing work. See what I do there? I'm industrious. I got to pay for this computer somehow. Also, I'm now on SoundCloud. I'm uploading all these shows to SoundCloud now in audio format. So if you want to not look at my ugly mug. Oh, by the way, I'm not on video today because my computer is running like dog hell, and I just don't want to push it too much. So I didn't really want to be on camera today anyway, to be honest. I know I'm depriving you of sexy time, but hey, sometimes that's what we do. But SoundCloud, if you don't want to look at my ugly mug at all anymore, just go ahead and hit me up on SoundCloud, Dead on Dave Productions on SoundCloud. Also, I had an amazing episode with Tommy C last night on Shot from the Point. The daily show we do there, In the Crease with Tommy C. It's fantastic. We really killed it. We did an hour. It was awesome. We did hockey talk like just nobody else does it quite like we do. Whether that's good or bad, that's for you to decide. But it was a really good episode. So come check us out live, 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. Every single day, but Monday through Thursday. I'm usually not there on Mondays, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm there with Tommy C, and we have a blast. We take calls. We talk shit. It's good times. If you like hockey, that's the place to go. Shot from the Point. Check it out. All right, so that's all of the stuff that we needed to get to before we start with all the football news, because there's so much. There's a few things I want to touch on in the wrestling world, because I know a lot of you do come here specifically for wrestling, so let's get that out of the way. I have not lightened my stance on Monday Night Raw. I feel it was easily the worst episode of this year, and maybe the worst episode of Raw I've seen in an entire 12-month period. It was really bad. I was not happy with this episode. I know a lot of people were. There's a few people who were trying to convince me that the Bray Wyatt promo was not as bad as I thought it was. They're wrong. At least in my opinion. That promo was not good. I've gone back and watched it a couple times. Still was not happy with it. It's far too campy. For what Bray Wyatt's supposed to be, this is just too campy. And I think The Undertaker needs to be on television. I think it would help. But he's not. That has been officially decided from the things that I've been reading on all of the dirt sheets, that he will definitely not be returning until WrestleMania. That is also true, it looks to be, about Sheamus. Sheamus will be at WrestleMania. We know that. And it looks like he will definitely, not definitely, but 90 to 95% likelihood be in the Intercontinental title ladder match, because there is one slot left. There's 7 guys that looks to be 100% in the match, and now Sheamus probably will be a surprise entrant as the 8th man there. So it's very interesting to see how that's going to go. Sheamus not on television until that event, kind of giving it a little bit more juice. We'll see how that works out. Speaking of returns, a little bit of a spoiler. The only spoiler I'm going to give about Smack Diggity Down is Mark Henry will make his return to television on Thursday, this week's episode of SmackDown, and he will be confronting somebody. You can take your guess as to who. Not cool, but yeah, Mark Henry at this point, apparently he's lost some weight. That's great. He's gotten himself back into good shape to make maybe one more good run. Does anyone have any interest in seeing Mark Henry on camera anymore? I don't think there's many people who really care. He's had a great career. He's a company man, and that's great. So, but what is he going to do for anybody, especially with the guy they're putting him with? I think it's unnecessary, but because of his size, it makes sense. So, finally, I just want to talk to the IWC for a second, the Internet Wrestling community. There's a serious problem. There's a serious problem going on. The biggest story this week coming out of Raw, and the number one trending topic on wrestling, on almost any forum that you go to, on any site, it's all over Twitter, it's everywhere, is Randy Orton giving the double middle finger salute on Raw. And the fact that it was caught partially on television, and even the fact that he was allowed to do it. That is the number one topic of discussion on any forum you go to. If you sit there and start talking about wrestling, it will not take long before someone brings up Randy Orton and what does it mean, and is it the Attitude Era and all of this stuff. I mean, it's insane. This is a serious problem. This is a serious problem. The older wrestling community, I'm talking people in my age group, I'm about 28 to 40. We are the problem right now with wrestling, okay? We read into everything, and I'm guilty of this in a lot of ways too. We read into everything, we bitch, complain, whine, and moan when we don't get our way, and then we constantly obsess over innocuous things like Randy Orton giving the double middle fingers instead of focusing on the terrible product that was Raw this week. Instead of focusing on one of the worst WrestleMania builds I have ever seen. I'm really going back the last few weeks and looking at the build to WrestleMania. All of the things that myself and Joe Cronin and a few other people are saying about WrestleMania, we are being very optimistic. This is going down as absolutely, at least for me, the worst WrestleMania build I've seen in the last decade, and I have a sinking suspicion, sinking, I have no idea, but I'm having one of those type of suspicions that this could be one of the worst WrestleMania shows in history, and it pains me to say that, but the fact that they are building things so awkwardly, and it makes you think either they're outthinking all of us or they're really, really, really not giving a shit. And I don't know which one is true. And I don't know who to hold responsible. I'm going to always go to Vince because he's the man. But, so he's still the man in charge. So I'm still going to put the onus on him. Until I know anything else, I don't know what to make of some of the things that are happening within WWE and within the booking department specifically. This is concerning. But it's partially our fault too. We're worried about what's the importance of Randy Orton giving a double middle finger? Who the fuck cares? Who cares what the rating is? We focus so much on the rating. Oh, PG, rated TV 13. Oh, it matters so much. No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. And I'm sorry that I'm getting a little angry about this, but it's just irritating because it doesn't matter. It matters so little because good booking, good writing, and good creative structure does not need a friggin' rating. It doesn't need to be 13 or TV 14. It doesn't need it. It could be PG. We've seen it work. It has worked. It's worked in the WWE since they've gone PG. There's been times where the booking was just much better than what it is now. There is a serious disconnect, and it's not gelling with the talent that they have because there is a lot of talent. The talent is overflowing. It's ready to come to a crescendo. The problem is there are serious creative hindrances that are holding everything back to where it should be. And it's just driving me insane. And we are part of that problem by constantly obsessing over stupid shit like this. Randy Orton giving the double middle fingers. Good for Randy Orton. It does nothing for the product. It added nothing to that angle. Had he not given those fingers, it wouldn't have mattered at all. It wouldn't have made a difference to what happened, to the beatdown that everybody saw was coming. They already botched the segment because of Seth Rollins' terribleness on the mic earlier and even during the match. Him begging off like that. We're talking about how the hell is Seth Rollins so tragically afraid of Randy Orton when he just went face-to-face with Brock Lesnar not long ago, when he went in a triple threat match with Brock Lesnar and John Cena. But we're supposed to buy that he's mortified and terrified and completely perplexed by Randy Orton? That makes no sense to me. And it's insulting. It just drives me nuts. So I'm going to stop talking about wrestling right now because I want to punch babies. What I'm going to go to now is the bigger story in the world, and that's the NFL. Well, not the bigger story in the world, but the bigger story in the realm of sports, and that is the absolute chaos that started yesterday when the NFL season, the new NFL league year, actually kicked off. I've never seen anything like this. Absolutely never seen anything like this as far as trades, indecision, craziness, players going to teams that just don't seem to make a lot of sense, money grabbing. This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And according to ESPN, there are some actual numbers-related reasons for it, especially the trades portion of it. Why did we see so many trades and so many big names, and why it might not be the end? Well, one of the reasons is the NFL announced that there was only 253 players on its official list of free agents. And based on the stats that ESPN is keeping, that's the lowest total since 2009. Okay, so that's significant. The other, and probably more significant reason for the increase of trades and maybe the teams reaching on players a little bit is over the past 2 years, the salary cap has risen by over $20 million. So surplus cap space is just a lot easier to acquire and come by and convince management that it's doable. Plus, teams have found a way to limit proration, on longer deals, and that's a big thing as well. They're finding ways to put more guaranteed money up front, and what looks to be a 6-year contract is really in all honesty, a 2-year contract. And we'll talk about some of those that happened just that very same way in a minute. Let's start with some of the bigger news of the day. Probably the biggest trade is Seattle stepping up and going after Jimmy Graham, getting Jimmy Graham from the New Orleans Saints, taking him away from Drew Brees for Max Unger, former Pro Bowl center, and the 31st pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. This is a crazy big deal for Seattle. One of the top 3 tight ends in the league. You know, he makes a hell of a lot of money, but Seattle was able to absorb it, so that wasn't a big deal. They go ahead and they get a guy that is going to be a security blanket for Russell Wilson. This is going to do so much for that offense because Jimmy Graham can stretch the field. He can play possession. He's not a terrible blocker. He's not known for blocking, but he knows how to do everything that a tight end is supposed to do. But what he does better than almost anybody else in this league at his position is line up at different spots. The guy lines up in the slot sometimes. He can play any wide receiver or tight end position on the field. He creates matchup nightmares for every secondary in the league because you don't know how to match up with this guy properly. You can't put a linebacker on him. Most DBs are too small to guard him. It's just he's too good. So he's going to create havoc this year because you have a quarterback who's been known as a game manager in a lot of ways in Russell Wilson. And this is something that a game manager would absolutely love to have is a guy like Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was able to perform so well with a dynamic quarterback like Drew Brees. Now he's going to have a guy who's probably going to be looking at him a little bit more. Probably, it would not surprise me if Jimmy Graham gets 3 to 7, as many as 7 more looks a game. And that's just because Drew Brees constantly looks for the bigger ball. You know, I think Drew Brees threw more deep balls than anybody else in football last year. He was near the top of the league at the very least. And that's been that way for a long time. That's Drew Brees' game. Russell Wilson is not going to be that same type of quarterback, and now he doesn't have to be. He's got a dynamic, over-the-middle, pass-catching, and playmaking tight end who can also play the slot. He can also play on the outside. He can play any position on the field when it comes to receiving the football, and he's going to be just an incredible asset. And not to mention, take the pressure off of Marshawn Lynch. Jesus. Every time that if they want to run a draw, if they want to run any type of delay, anything that's a timing-based run play, Jimmy Graham is going to bring somebody either off the line or bring somebody up and give away the defensive scheme. This is going to be a very dangerous thing for Seattle to have. And as far as New Orleans goes, I don't understand this move. Unless there's some talks that, and unless this is true, that Drew Brees might be getting moved as well, which that would be shocking, but not as shocking now that Jimmy Graham is moved. I don't get this. This team was having problems moving the ball at times last year anyway. So unless they're going to change the identity, which does not make a lot of sense considering where Drew Brees is at this point in his career, does not make sense at where the team seems to be at this point in the franchise, I don't really get this. They're not going to be able to replace Jimmy Graham's production in the draft. Max Unger is a very nice center, but I don't think this is a very good or smart trade for New Orleans. I mean, if it's a salary cap move, okay, I can kind of get that, but there'd have to be more moves to follow. So don't be surprised if we see more of that. I think Seattle wins this trade easily, absolutely easily. We're going to talk about another trade now, probably the most crazy, mind-bending trade that the NFL has seen in a long time. Nobody really understands this trade, and I'm going to try to make sense of it the best I can. Sam Bradford, the oft-injured but immensely talented former quarterback of the St. Louis Rams, has been traded to Philadelphia for Nick Foles, a guy who was drafted, with not much regard, ended up having an amazing season, an immensely accurate quarterback. Last year he had a little bit of a down season, hurt a lot himself, and that was a problem. He couldn't stay on the field. But even when he did, he was woefully inconsistent, and that was a problem. So which Nick Foles is there really? This trade has little to do about these players. It really does. This trade has everything to do with Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly has basically gone in there with a mafia-style attitude, and he's been doing it progressively since he has been the head coach of the Eagles. And this year, he has decided, you know what, now I've put all my men into place. Now it's time to make the hits. And he is whacking everybody that's in his way, and that's what he's done. This team is now his franchise. He owns it. Everything that happens from this point on is on Chip Kelly's head and nobody else's. And it's just the way he wants it. We don't know how smart or retarded Chip Kelly might be. We have no idea, but we're about to find out because he has reshaped this roster to fit exactly how he wants it. And some people are saying, well, since they're getting Bradford, that has to mean that Mariota is not coming to Philadelphia. See, I don't agree with that at all. I think this even heightens the idea that Mariota is coming. They are definitely going to be pulling the trigger on Mariota now. Foles was not going to be the guy to get them to the playoffs next year. I think most people would agree with that, especially with the shakeup of the offense. I mean, without Macklin, without Shady McCoy, this is going to be a different style team. And obviously, Chip Kelly didn't feel that Nick Foles could run that offense. So he looked around the league, and he looked for value. He looked for a guy that was going to be able to run his offense to the best of the ability this year. A guy who they could get as well as dumping someone they no longer wanted. And that's Sam Bradford. Now, the problem is Sam Bradford has probably nothing left in his knees. He's had so many ACL surgeries. It feels like he's had 4. It really does. I know he's had some shoulder problems in the past as well, but it feels like he's had like a ACL repair surgery in each of the last 4 seasons. I know that's not the case, but it certainly feels that way. But the reality is Bradford is still only 27 years old. He's going to be getting away from that offensive line that has been absolutely getting him murdered since he has come into the league. And he's going to a team that it's a much quicker style offense. It's not designed to keep the ball in the hand. Bradford should be able to stay upright much more frequently. I think that's something that he's definitely looking forward to, and he should be able to kind of resurrect his career. This is a perfect place for him, and it's a perfect place for Chip Kelly. It's a perfect quarterback for Chip Kelly for the short term. Now, here's where it comes a little tricky to me, and where it comes a little dicey, a little sketchy. There's a good possibility that the Rams were going to give up on Bradford. There was a lot of talk around the league. I was reading this morning that there's a very good possibility that Bradford was going to get cut, just outright cut. So why make this move if you're Chip Kelly? Why make the trade? It's so you don't have to trade Foles, or so you don't have to cut Foles. I don't really understand what the thinking is here for a guy that was probably going to get cut. And, you know, it's a very – I wish I was talking to Jeff Huffman right now because maybe he would give me a little bit more insight whether or not he heard that Bradford was going to get cut. But I've read it in enough places to where I think that's pretty safe to assume that it was probably going to happen. What does this trade mean? It only means something for one person, that's Chip Kelly. You get Bradford to run the offense this year. Mariota is going to come in, and he's going to learn the ropes. Mariota was not going to be the guy to run the offense this season. It was not going to happen anyway. That's just reality. He's going to need a season to learn this offense. He was scouted. He was coveted by Chip Kelly before. This is the type of guy that Chip Kelly wants to run this team. And he's going to be able to teach him for a season and let Sam Bradford either come in and prove that he can stay healthy and maybe reestablish his value, or completely bury himself and prove that he's not going to be a quarterback in this league past this year. This is a make or break season for Sam Bradford because you have to assume that he's going in as the unquestioned starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. He can resurrect his career right now. He's 27 years old. If he has a breakout season and lives up to all that potential and all that talent that this kid has, because he does, look out. And maybe the Eagles can make a trade and recoup some of the value for him and make this trade really seem like a smart thing in another year. We're not going to know if Chip Kelly's a genius for at least 18 months, but don't be surprised if this turns out to be a really smart move for that franchise. I like Sam Bradford, so I'm a little bit biased here because I think Sam Bradford can still play. If he could stay healthy, if he could stay upright, the guy could play. So we'll see what happens. The Detroit Lions got in on the trade stuff after they completely botched the situation with Donkey Kong Sue, with Ndamukong Suh. Completely botched the situation. They get Haloti Ngata from the Ravens for a 2015 4th and 5th round picks. Wow. So you're getting rid of one of the most dynamic defensive linemen in the league. He's a top 5 guy. Whether you like Sue or not, he's a top 5 guy on the line. There's no question about that. He wreaks havoc. He's not a J.J. Watt, but he's a hell of a good player. He's a top 5, top 6 guy. And instead, you botched everything. You didn't want it. It just makes me insane. You don't franchise this guy. You don't do anything that you can do to keep him on your team. Instead, you have faith that he's going to stay with the team, and he walks. So what do? You have to give up some of your assets to plug the line with an aging, declining Ngata? Now, I know it's only a 4th or 5th round, but 4th rounders, 3rd rounders, and even sometimes 5th rounders are becoming more and more important in today's NFL. And you have to give up a couple of those because your front office botched negotiations with your best player. Wow. Best defensive player. Calvin Johnson's still their best player. This is crazy to me. And now you're stuck with Ngata. Ngata's still a name, so it's a trade worth talking about. So it's just very interesting. The Ravens win here because they don't have to cut a fan favorite like Ngata. They get some assets that should help them. You can get a serviceable defensive tackle, at least a big body in the 4th round. I mean, you can find that. It happens all the time. And there's quite a bit of defensive line depth in free agency, so they should be able to plug this hole relatively easily. And even if they can't find someone who's exactly what Ngata's going to bring them, the drop-off for them between Ngata and whoever they get to replace him is not going to be as severe as the drop-off the Lions are going to have from Sue to Ngata. So the clear winners in this is Baltimore. Clear winners. And this is the only good thing that's happened to Baltimore this offseason, it seems like. My God. So the other trade to talk about is, of course, the one that went official to Brandon Marshall to New York, Jets, Jets. Now, the reason why I'm revisiting this is because now the trade is official. It turned out to be for a 5th round pick, which is a little perplexing because I do feel, even though Marshall did not have a good season last year due to injuries and all that stuff, and yes, he's 31, and yes, he carried a big cap number, I still feel like a 5th rounder is giving him away. How you can't at least get a conditional extra pick in there in case Marshall returns, which is very possible, in case he returns to peak performance and makes the All-Star game, the Pro Bowl. You have to have some kind of conditional pick in there, I think, at least for me. You have to have a conditional pick somewhere in there to try and recoup some of the value. Now, that being said, now they've announced that Jay Cutler will not be going anywhere, which I don't think is a big surprise, and he is unquestionably the man going for the Bears this season. At the very least, they have fully committed. They are all in on Jay Cutler for this year. which it makes me sick to my stomach, but it also makes perfect sense because there's simply nobody else who's probably going to be better than he can possibly be. Yes, we're going to go back to the well. This is what we do with the Chicago. This is what we do with Jay Cutler. The potential of Jay Cutler. The potential to stay there. Maybe still there. Maybe this is the offensive scheme that's going to finally work for him. Maybe this is going to be the right friggin' mix of players that is going to bring out the potential. I doubt it. It sickens me to even say it. But, I've lost faith in Jay Cutler, but I also understand that with the money they decided to pay him, that they're going to have to ride or die with him. And it's unfortunate that Jay Cutler could take down this administration that just got into power in Chicago, but the reality is he's probably not only here for this season. He's here for another one after because he's still got guaranteed money on the books for the next 2 years. So he's probably going to be starting in Chicago those 2 seasons. If he has the type of year that he had last year, it's going to be hard to say that John Fox is going to make it out of those 2 seasons. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think we will see a turnaround for Jay Cutler a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's not going to win the MVP or anything like that, but I think he's going to have a solid year. We've seen solid seasons out of him before, and if he can stay upright, the offensive line is improving. If he can get the ball out of his hand quickly, if this offensive scheme, something similar to what we saw in Denver, is put into place, who knows? This could work. Hopefully. I sound so pathetic in my hopefulness, but that's what it is. And because they decided to go with Cutler, it kind of tells me what I already knew, and that's that Marshall and Cutler really started to hate each other towards the end of the year. Now, we heard about this, that the relationship was fractured. Well, I think it was much more fractured than we ever thought it possible because they got rid of, at one time, a guy who was probably Jay Cutler's best friend on the team and a guy who was a security blanket on the field. So, but now they've got rid of him, and maybe it was partially to make Jay Cutler feel a little bit better. We'll never know. Let's get into some of the free agency deals that are shaking the world up. Let's get into them. We'll talk about them for a few minutes, and then I'll get you guys out of here. Frank Gore, the aging Frank Gore, after he was all but signing with the Eagles. He says, nope, okie doke ya, I'm going to Indianapolis. Now, this is an interesting move. I like this move. They have some players down in Indy that can run the ball decently. They don't have anyone consistent. Trent Richardson, he still can be a reclamation project. You have now with Trent Richardson, if he's going to be your number 2 guy, and it's not going to be, I believe it was Bradshaw last year was their primary guy, but he got hurt. I don't know if he's going to be back. But if it's going to be Gore and Richardson, I think Gore is the right guy that you want in there because he's a different style running back than Richardson is. Richardson can turn into this bruising type of back, this short distance type of running back. And if Gore can kind of teach him how to get his head on straight and run with more authority and assert himself into holes and pick a lane and go at it with more, what we saw in his college years, then Trent Richardson could become an asset for this team. He's going to have to be somewhat, or they're going to have to get another guy to do that because Gore doesn't have a lot in the tank, I don't think. He might have something left, but he doesn't have a whole hell of a lot left. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Could they be looking at a guy like LeGarrette Blount, who is toying with the idea of leaving New England? I mean, hell, everybody else is, and we'll get to that in a moment too. Everyone else is leaving New England. He might as well too. But could a team like the Colts seem like a good place for him? Speaking of a former Patriot running back, Shane Vereen, he signed with the Giants, gives the Giants all kinds of versatility. This is a good move for both Vereen and the Giants. You get a guy who has playoff experience, who has Super Bowl experience, and a guy who could just straight out run the football a little bit. When he can stay healthy, Vereen is a good player, and the Giants desperately need somebody to complement Brandon Jennings, who did not do everything that they were expecting him to do after a breakout season in Oakland the year before. Here's a fairly big deal. I did not think that Torrey Smith was going to sign for as little as he did. It's still a very big contract. He signed for $40 million. $22 million of that is guaranteed, but he signs with the 49ers. Now, this is an interesting move to me, because what does it mean for Crabtree? The Niners are having a terrible offseason, losing Harbaugh, having Patrick Willis retire because of a toe and other injuries, of course, as well, losing Frank Gore, a face of the franchise, Crabtree possibly not coming back. It's looking more and more likely that he's not going to be coming back. The ongoing saga of Aldon Smith. It's just there's all these things going on. Kaepernick having such a terrible season last year. Not terrible, but definitely not what they were expecting to see out of him. So Torrey Smith coming in, being a home run hitting type of wide receiver, but not a consistent every play type of guy that you would want for a dude like Colin Kaepernick. What does this do for this season for the Niners? And more importantly, is this just a money grab by Torrey Smith? I have no problems with a guy going to get his money, and that's what he did. Mike Wallace did it, and now Torrey Smith did it. It's not a big deal. But is this the best football move? This is the first of many questionable football moves that I've seen out of this free agency period. And I'm sure we're going to see a whole hell of a lot more. And we're going to talk about a few more of them in a minute. But next we're going to go to Denver, where they re-signed their tight end from last year, Green, and they bring in Owen Daniels. And this is to replace the gap that is now filled, or that was left by Julius Thomas, who has signed with Jacksonville. And we'll talk about that in a moment too. But what this does is Owen Daniels is a good tight end. He's a pass-catching guy. He knows how to block. He knows how to run routes. This should be a good guy for Peyton Manning, a security blanket type tight end. He's always loved his tight ends, and I think he's going to love Owen Daniels as well. Green was a good tight end for them last year, so he's got familiarity, and he's going to help acclimate Owen Daniels into a better role. So I think this is a good move for Denver. And I don't see a lot of offensive numbers declining at the tight end position. I'm sure it's going to be hard to replace what Julius Thomas has done over the last 2 years. But then again, I don't think Julius Thomas is going to put up the numbers in Jacksonville that he did in Denver. So really, Denver can come out looking like the studs here, because they're not paying Daniels as much as Julius Thomas cashed in for. That's for damn sure. So that's just one way of looking at it. Jake Locker. This was kind of a surprise. 27-year-old Jake Locker is retiring from the NFL out of nowhere. He's leaving the Titans. He's retiring. This is just kind of out of nowhere. Strange story. He's had a little bit of injury problems, but this is a guy who a lot of people projected to be a pretty decent quarterback in the league. It hasn't worked out that way, but part of that is because of the team that he's played for and the system that he's played in. But it's quite crazy. You don't see a lot of this happening where a guy just walks away. But this isn't the only time that we've seen it in the same day, because linebacker Jason Worldis of the Pittsburgh Steelers is retiring at the age of 27. Out of nowhere. These are very weird things. Now, Worldis or Locker were not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination. They weren't top 5 players on their teams, but they were serviceable guys who were able to play the position and still had a lot of upside. Locker was a very good quarterback at times. He looked like he had some really, he didn't have seasons that were good, but he had games that were good. He had moments that he looked like he had something more. And it's the same thing with Jason Worldis at the linebacker position for Pittsburgh. He was never a monster, but he was certainly serviceable and was able to put some pressure on quarterbacks and drop back into coverage when he needed to. These are two guys that are going to be missed by their teams in more ways than one, so it's quite interesting. Let's move on to the curious case of the New York Jets. Getting Brandon Marshall, you already have a guy like Decker in place. You need a slot guy. And, well, they had a slot guy. They had Percy Harvin, one of the best slot receivers, potentially if he can ever stay on the field for an entire year, in the game. Well, not anymore because they release him, which was not a surprise from most people, I think. They were expecting this move to happen, especially with the acquisition of Brandon Marshall. But Percy Harvin is going to be a wanted man by a lot of teams out there because he makes a lot of sense. He's a threat. The guy can return punts. He can return kicks. He can run from the backfield. He can line up anywhere on the field. He doesn't have great size, but he's got enough to play. His speed makes matchups a nightmare if he's playing on the outside or if he's lining up as a slot. Percy Harvin is going to be wanted, and I don't see him being on the market very long. Weird move for the Jets. Now, granted, it was a move that most people saw coming, and this has to do with the next thing we're going to talk about, but it's still, I don't think it's a great football move. But they needed the money, apparently. They needed the salary cap space because they just threw $70 million at a returning Darrelle Revis. Revis Island will return to New York. He's coming home, as he liked to say on Twitter. He's leaving New England, where he just won a Super Bowl, to take a whole lot of money to go ahead and play for the Jets. Now, here's the interesting thing. He had a $20 million option, which would have been more than he would have made this year, that he is making this year now with the Jets. But he had a $20 million option with New England. They declined to pick it up, which is completely understandable. $20 million is a lot of money for a 30-year-old cornerback who can be kind of a problem at times in the locker room. However, he's a top 3 cornerback in this league and probably will continue to be that for the next 2 seasons. So they cut him, or they don't cut him, they just don't re-sign him. They don't pick up the option. They let him walk. Hopefully they can keep him on the team. I thought he'd stay with New England because it made a lot of sense. I think they were probably trying to get him to sign for no more than $15 million, and Darrelle Revis just said, fuck that, plain and simple. He just was not having it. So he didn't do it. He was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking that little, and that's it. This is a big move. It's a crazy move for Revis going back to New York, where he's had a love-hate relationship with the fan base at times, and, of course, the media. More the media than the fans. The fans seem to love Darrelle Revis, and why wouldn't you? But here's the thing. $39 million of this money is guaranteed, fully guaranteed. $39 million of the $48 million of this contract. Or I'm sorry, it's even more. It's of the $70 million. $48 million is going to be paid in the first 3 years, and $39 million is full guaranteed. The first 2 years are guaranteed at $16 and $17 million, and then like another $6 or $8 million is guaranteed for the third season. But this is a lot of money. This is a lot of money to pay a guy who's had knee problems, who is also reaching that number that scares teams off. This is a lot of money, and he was in a system, in a secondary that was very good, had a lot of talent, and was able to probably give him a lot of help. Now, he's still one of probably only 5 or 6 cornerbacks in the league that you can put on any top receiver in the game and know that he can go one-on-one. So while I'm kind of poo-pooing this deal a little bit for the Jets, I'm also praising it because of the talent that you could potentially be getting if he's going to continue to play at the level that he has shown for the past, while he's been on the field for the past, his entire career, let's face it. So it's quite interesting. It's another devastating blow for New England, who have just seemed to be just losing players. People are running out of there like it's a sinking ship. It's kind of bizarre when you think about it. New England has got to start making moves because the rest of the division, because remember, the Jets are in the same division, they're getting better. They're improving on both sides of the ball. All 3 Buffalo, Miami, and New York have gotten markedly better. There's no question about that. The only team that has not seemed to really do anything this offseason is New England. Are they going too soon? Are they going to start making some moves? Are they going to wait until the draft to start making other moves to kind of bolster their roster? They've done that in the past. Are they going to continue to do so? This is insane to me. This is crazy. I have not seen an offseason start this way in a very long time. Who knows as to why? I couldn't tell you. I gave some reasons for it earlier, but What do you guys think of the insanity that has ensued on day one of free agency in the NFL? Are you interested in the draft? What do you guys think? I want to hear what you have to say in the comment section below. Hit me up on Twitter. Tell me what you guys think there. If there's anything I missed, go ahead and shout it out. We got a corner, Thurmond. He rejoins Maxwell in the secondary for the Eagles. So the Eagles made another move. I did forget that. So there's things like that I did not talk about, but that's okay. If there's anything else, if there's stuff about your team that you'd like to hear about, go ahead and let me know, and I'll do my best to sound like I know what I'm doing. Because, let's face it, I have no idea. I'm just doing the best I can here, people. I'm just a fat guy with opinions, and hopefully, by the end of the night, I'll be a fat guy with opinions on a much better computer, with better audio and better visuals, and it's all because my wife likes to walk like a mongoloid. But it's okay because I love her most of the time. But thank you for joining me here on Dead on Dave Productions. Once again, this has been your Daily Focus Wednesday Random Rant. We will see you next time. Peace.